The steam curled like ghosts from the half-filled tub. And there he was, Dylan, my stepson, curled into himself, shoulders shaking not from the chill but from the sobs that ripped through the quiet house like thunder. I come home early from the site, boots still caked in construction dust, expecting the usual silence of our empty McMansion in suburban Seattle. But the bathroom door hung ajar, spilling a sliver of light that pulled me in like a siren's call. His whisper cut sharper than any nail gun I'd ever mishandled. "Don't look at me, Matt. Just don't." I froze in the doorway, heart slamming against my ribs like a demolition hammer. Dylan was 19, all lean muscle and shadowed eyes, the kind of beauty that sneaks up on you in the rain-slicked streets of the Pacific Northwest, unassuming until it knocks you flat. We'd been thrown together 3 years ago when I married his mom, Sarah, in a whirlwind ceremony at Alki Beach, her laughter mixing with the salt spray while Dylan hung back, arms crossed, a storm cloud in skinny jeans. He was her from a failed marriage, the one she dragged like an anchor through therapy sessions and late-night confessions. Me, Matthew Hale, 42, broad-shouldered ex-Marine turned contractor, the guy who fixed leaky roofs and broken fences but couldn't patch the holes in his own damn life. Sarah had been my reset button after my divorce, a soft-spoken graphic designer who saw past the calluses to the kid from Tacoma who'd lost his folks young and built walls higher than any foundation I poured. But that night, with the house echoing her absence, she was in Portland for a client pitch. Gone till morning, the air thickened with something unspoken. Dylan's clothes were a crumpled heap on the tile, faded band tee and ripped Levi's that smelled faintly of weed and the ocean. He didn't hear me at first, or maybe he did and just didn't care, his hands scrubbing at his arms like he could erase the invisible ink of whatever had marked him. Bruises? No, not that. Worse, self-inflicted scratches, red lines blooming like accusations across his pale skin, the kind that come from fighting demons you can't punch. "Jesus, kid," I muttered, stepping in before my brain caught up, the door clicking shut behind me like a confession booth. He jerked upright, water sloshing over the edge, his green eyes, Sarah's eyes, wide with panic, then narrowing into something fiercer, like a cornered wolf. "Get out," he snarled, but his voice cracked, betraying the plea beneath. I couldn't. Instead, I grabbed the towel from the rack, the one with the frayed edges from too many washes, and knelt by the tub, my knees protesting the cold floor. "You're not okay," I said, low and steady, like talking down a jittery client on a shaky scaffold. "Let me help," he laughed then, bitter and wet, splashing water at me half-heartedly. "Help? Like you helped Mom? By pretending everything's fine until it explodes." The words landed like rebar to the gut. We'd all danced around the fractures, Sarah's drinking, my long hours dodging the intimacy she craved, Dylan's silences that stretched into weeks. But this was raw, exposed. The boy I'd watched grow from sullen teen to this fractured young man, unraveling in a tub of lukewarm regret. I dipped the towel in, wringing it out with hands that had steadied beams in earthquakes, and pressed it gently to his shoulder. He flinched but didn't pull away, his breath hitching as the cloth met skin. "Talk to me, Dylan. What's got you like this?" Minutes stretched, the drip of the faucet marking time like a metronome in hell. Finally, it spilled out in fragments. The hookup app disaster, the guy from the community college bar who'd called him a freak after, the whispers in the locker room that followed him home like bad debts. I'm not. "I can't be this," he choked, head dropping forward, wet hair curtaining his face. "Not with you here." Seeing it, the room spun, not from the steam but from the weight of it, his truth, laid bare, mirroring the secrets I'd buried under flannel shirts and Friday night beers. I'd known I was gay since basic training, stolen glances in the barracks that I drowned in deployments and denial. Sarah was safe, a bridge over the chasm. But Dylan. God, Dylan had been the complication from day one, his quiet rebellion stirring something dormant, dangerous. And now, here we were, my hand lingering on his damp skin, the line between protector and something more blurring like fog on the sound. I should have stood up, walked out, called Sarah. But I stayed, murmuring nonsense about worth and storms passing, my thumb tracing a path that was meant to soothe but ignited instead. His eyes lifted, locking on mine, and in that gaze was a question neither of us had voiced. The towel slipped from my fingers into the water, forgotten, as the space between us shrank to nothing. That moment in the bathroom lingered like the scent of eucalyptus soap long after the water drained, a pivot point that reshaped the architecture of our lives. The next morning, Sarah breezed in with coffee and apologies for the early flight, oblivious to the undercurrents swirling beneath our forced smiles at breakfast. Dylan shoveled cereal like it was armor, avoiding my eyes, while I gripped my mug too tight, knuckles white as fresh-poured concrete. "Rough night?" she asked him, ruffling his hair. He shrugged, mumbling about a headache, and I nodded along, the liar's compact sealing our lips. Days blurred into a tense routine, me at the job site in Bellevue, hammering away at a spec home for tech bros who wanted ocean views without the tide's pull. Dylan at his graphic design classes downtown, sketching logos that hid the chaos in his lines. Sarah shuttling between us, her freelance gigs a buffer against the growing static. But the house felt smaller, charged, every brush in the hallway a spark on dry tinder. I catch him watching me from the kitchen island, those green eyes tracing the veins in my forearms like they were maps to buried treasure. Or I'd pause in the garage, mid-oil change on my old Ford F-150, and feel his presence in the doorway, silent but electric. It was a rainy Tuesday when the dam cracked wider. I'd come home soaked from a downpour that turned the site into a mud pit, peeling off my soaked Carhartt jacket in the mudroom. Dylan was there, cross-legged on the floor with his laptop, earbuds in, lost in whatever digital escape he chased. He looked up, startled, and yanked one out. "You look like a drowned rat, Matt." His grin was tentative, the first real one since the bath, and it hit me like sunlight breaking clouds over the Olympics. "Yeah, well, rats build dams." I shot back, toweling my hair, the motion pulling my wet tee tight across my chest. His gaze dipped, then snapped away, cheeks flushing under the freckles Sarah swore came from her Irish side. We laughed it off, awkward as teenagers, but when I offered to grab us beers from the fridge, for the builders, I joked, he nodded, scooting over to make space. We sat there on the cold tile, backs against the cabinets, cracking cans and trading stories that skirted the edges of truth. He told me about Seattle's underground scene, the all-ages clubs in Capitol Hill where drag queens ruled with wit sharper than stilettos, and the fear that choked him every time a cute guy smiled his way. "It's like, I want it, but it feels like stealing," he said, staring at the foam clinging to the can's rim. "Mom would freak. And you'd probably ship me off to some conversion camp in the Bible Belt." The beer soured in my throat. "Dylan," I started, voice rough as gravel. "I've got no stones to throw." "None." The words hung, heavy, and before I could reel them back, they tumbled out, the barracks confessions, the bar in San Diego where I'd kissed a sailor under neon lights and run like hell the next dawn. His eyes widened, not in judgment, but in recognition, a bridge forming over the chasm. "So you're?" He trailed off, and I nodded, the admission freeing something caged too long. That night, after Sarah crashed early with a migraine, we migrated to the living room, the leather couch sagging under our weight as some indie flick flickered on Netflix, forgotten 5 minutes in. His knee brushed mine, accidental at first, then deliberate, a question in the pressure. I didn't move away. Instead, my hand found his, fingers lacing like rebar in concrete, solid and unyielding. "This is dangerous," I whispered, but my body betrayed me, leaning in as his breath ghosted my jaw. Our first kiss was tentative, tasting of hops and hesitation, his lips soft against the stubble I'd forgotten to shave. It deepened like a foundation pour, slow and inevitable, his hands fisting my shirt as if anchoring against a gale. We broke apart gasping, foreheads pressed, the room spinning with the weight of crossing that line. Stepfather, stepson, but in the dim glow of the TV, just two men adrift in a sea of want. Guilt crashed in waves after cold showers and averted eyes come morning. But the pull was magnetic. Nights when Sarah's snores filled the master bedroom becoming our stolen hours. Whispers in the basement rec room, where his sketches of abstract lovers papered the walls. Hurried touches in the laundry room, my back against the dryer as his mouth mapped my collarbone. It was fire, consuming and clarifying, peeling back layers I'd armored over for decades. Dylan bloomed under it, his art turning vibrant, laughter echoing through the house like it hadn't since we'd said, "I do," yet shadows loomed. Sarah noticed the shift, how Dylan lingered at dinners, how my tools stayed pristine in the garage because I was home more, mending fences that weren't broken. "You two are thick as thieves lately," she teased one evening over takeout pad thai, her eyes crinkling with that warmth that had hooked me. We deflected with jokes, but the lie festered, a crack in the slab. The betrayal came swift as a coastal squall. 2 months in, on a crisp October afternoon when the leaves turned the neighborhood into a postcard of rust and gold. I'd wrapped a job early, surprise takeout from that faux spot in the International District clutched in a greasy bag, dreaming of Dylan's smile when I handed him the basil chicken. But pulling into the driveway, Sarah's Prius was there, homesick, she texted, and through the bay window, I saw them, her, rifling through Dylan's desk drawer, his sketchbook open like an accusation, pages of intertwined figures that screamed our secret in charcoal strokes. The door flew open before I could turn the knob, her face ashen, book clutched like a weapon. "Matthew? What the hell is this?" Dylan's room, our sanctuary, reeked of her perfume and betrayal, the air thick with unspoken verdicts. He burst in behind her, eyes wild. "Mom, it's not." But she whirled, tears carving tracks through her makeup. "Not what? Not you too?" I saw the looks, the whispers. "God, Dylan, him? Your stepdad." The fight erupted, words flying like splintered 2x4s, her accusations of grooming, my defenses crumbling into pleas of love, Dylan's sobs cutting through like a saw blade. "It's real. Mom, he sees me." But she recoiled, packing a bag with trembling hands. Calling me a predator in the same breath, she begged Dylan to come with her. He wouldn't. And as her taillights faded down the cul-de-sac, the house exhaled, hollowed out, leaving us in the wreckage. Winter clamped down on Seattle like a vice, gray skies bleeding into January's relentless drizzle, mirroring the chill that settled in our bones. Sarah filed for divorce the week after Thanksgiving, her lawyer's letter arriving like an eviction notice on certified mail. Irreconcilable differences, cited with the cold precision of a contract clause. She didn't fight for the house, just the dog and half the savings, vanishing into a rental in Fremont with her sister. Radio silence broken only by texts to Dylan. We can fix this. Come home. He deleted them unread, curling into me on the couch each night, his body a furnace against the drafty windows. We tried normalcy, piecing it together like salvaged lumber. Mornings became ritual. Coffee brewing in the pot I'd bought at a yard sale in Ballard. Dylan sketching at the table while I scanned bids on my tablet. Build something big today? He'd ask, foot hooking mine under the table, and I'd grin. Only if you promise not to distract the foreman. Afternoons, he'd drag me to the Pike Place market, weaving through tourists to snag fresh salmon or those lavender scones from Le Panier, our hands brushing in the crowd. A claim staked in public, tentative but defiant. Love deepened in the quiet hours, romantic as a John Hughes reel but raw, etched with the scars of what we'd torched. We'd drive my truck up to Discovery Park at sunset, parking on the bluff where the sound met sky, his head on my shoulder as seals barked below. Tell me about before, he'd murmur, fingers tracing the tattoos on my bicep, a bald eagle from my service days, now faded like old regrets. I'd spin yarns of boot camp pranks and stateside hookups, the ones that fizzled because they weren't real. Not like this. He'd share his fears, the coming out dreams that ended in rejection, and I'd hold him tighter, whispering, "You're enough. We're enough." But conflict brewed beneath the idol, betrayals aftershocks rippling out. Dylan's college friends noticed his glow, the way he lit up talking about this guy, and whispers turned to questions. One night at a dive bar in Belltown, over cheap IPAs and a jukebox crooning Springsteen, his buddy Jax cornered him. "Dude, is Hale your stepdad? That's messed up." Dylan stormed out, fists clenched, and I found him later by the water taxi dock. Chain-smoking Camels he swore he'd quit. "They don't get it," he spat, ash scattering on the wind. "It's not some power trip. It's you." I pulled him close, rain mingling with our tears. "Then we prove it. No more hiding." But hiding was our armor, and shedding it invited the storm. The climax hit in February, Valentine's Day of all ironies, when Sarah resurfaced, not with olive branch, but Molotov. She'd been digging, talking to my crew, unearthing my past flings from a decade ago, painting me as the serial seducer in emails to Dylan's dean, anonymous tips to the local rag about family scandal in the suburbs. The paper didn't bite, but the college did. A meeting called. Dylan hauled in for a conduct review. Whispers of expulsion if he didn't address the instability at home. He came home shattered, slamming the door so hard the windows rattled. "She wants to ruin us," he yelled, pacing the kitchen like a caged panther. "Says I'm brainwashed, that you're manipulating me for kicks." Rage boiled in me, hot as molten lead, and I grabbed my keys. "I'll fix this. Talk to her. End it clean." The confrontation was at her sister's duplex, a craftsman squeezed between vape shops on Aurora Avenue. Sarah met me on the porch, arms crossed over a sweater that swallowed her frame, eyes hollowed by months of what-ifs. "You stole him, Matt." "My boy." Her voice cracked, and mine did too, spilling apologies laced with defenses. "I love him, Sarah." "Not like that at first, but it grew." "We grew." She laughed, hollow, rain streaking her face. "Love, you wrecked us. And now, you'll wreck him too when the novelty fades." I left with no resolution, just a plea for her to back off, the door slamming like finality. Driving home, wipers slashing the downpour, doubt clawed in, was she right? Was I the villain in this script? Age and authority twisting affection into abuse? Dylan waited up, curled on the stairs, and when I confessed the stalemate, his face crumpled. "Then go. If it's easier." The words ignited the blaze. I hauled him up, crushing him against me, our kiss fierce as a nor'easter, teeth and tongues and desperation. We stumbled to the bedroom, ours now, clothes shedding like old skin, bodies colliding in a tangle of need and fear. It was our first time fully, no hurried fumbles and shadows. Him arching under me, gasps echoing off posters of Radiohead and Basquiat, my name a mantra on his lips. Dawn found us spent, limbs entwined, the world outside thawing under tentative sun. But betrayal's blade cuts deep, and Sarah's next move was surgical. She sued for custody, claiming Dylan was a minor in emotional distress, 19, but fragile in her narrative. Court dates loomed, lawyers circling like gulls over chum, the house a bunker under siege. Dylan withdrew, sketches turning dark, nights spent staring at the ceiling while I paced, fists bloodied on a punching bag in the garage. Spring unfurled reluctantly, cherry blossoms in the U District mocking our wilted resolve as the hearing approached. We lawyered up on shoestring, me cashing out an IRA. Dylan selling his vintage guitar at a pawn shop on First Avenue, the American dream inverted into nightmare. Sarah's case was airtight on paper. Concerned mother protecting her vulnerable son from predatory stepfather. Affidavits from therapists she'd strong-armed into sessions. Ours? A Hail Mary of love letters disguised as journals. Dylan's testimony that we'd make eyes roll in its honesty. The courtroom in downtown Seattle was a sterile beast, wood paneling scarred by decades of fractured families. The judge a silver-haired woman with eyes like agates, impartial, but weary. Sarah took the stand first, voice steady as she recounted the discovery, tears artfully timed. "I just want my son safe," she said, glancing at Dylan across the aisle, where he sat ramrod beside me, hands slick in mine under the bench. Her betrayal stung fresh, the woman I'd vowed to cherish reduced to this, weaponizing our history against us. Then Dylan. He stood tall, voice quavering at first but gaining steel, recounting the bath, the connection, the love that bloomed not from coercion but consent. "Matt didn't take anything," he said, eyes locking on hers. "He gave me myself back." Gasps rippled. The gallery, mostly strangers, a few reporters scribbling furiously, leaning in. My turn was brutal, cross-examined on my orientation, my marriage's cracks, painted as the older man exploiting youth. "Isn't it convenient," her lawyer sneered, "that your love coincides with my client's absence?" I swallowed bile, staring at the flag behind the bench. Love isn't convenient. It's the mess we choose. Recess dragged in a holding room that smelled of stale coffee and despair. Dylan paced. What if she wins? I pulled him close, murmuring against his temple. Then we fight dirtier. Run to Portland, Vancouver, hell, Baja if we have to. But the verdict, delivered after lunch under fluorescent hum, was a mercy. No custody change. Sarah's claims dismissed as vindictive. A restraining order against further harassment. The court recognizes the autonomy of young adults, the judge intoned, and the complexity of family bonds. Outside, rain-slick steps gleaming, Sarah waited, face a mask of defeat. This isn't over, she whispered to Dylan, but he turned away, arm linked in mine. It is, Mom. For me, we walked to the truck, her silhouette shrinking in the rear view, a chapter closing with the finality of a gavel. Healing came piecemeal, humanistic in its grit. Summer scorched the sound, drawing us to beach bonfires in West Seattle, where Dylan burned his old sketches in the flames, phoenix-like, emerging with bolder lines. I took a foreman gig on a green build in Georgetown, sustainable beams for a co-op that housed queer youth, ironic justice, pouring foundations for lives like ours. Sarah faded to holidays, tentative brunches at neutral cafes, her apologies thawing into awkward acceptance. I was scared. For all of us, our love matured, romantic in stolen weekends at cabins on Hood Canal, where we'd fish at dawn and make love by lantern light, bodies mapping each other's histories. Emotional depths plumbed in therapy, separate at first, then joint, unearthing the why of our collision. My fear of abandonment, his of invisibility. Dylan graduated that June, portfolio bursting with pieces that screamed authenticity, landing a gig at an indie studio in Pioneer Square. To us, he'd toast with craft cider, clinking my whiskey, the builders, yet drama lingered, a undercurrent in every American tale of forbidden fruit. A year on, an ex of mine surfaced via email, jealous ghost from San Diego, spilling old photos to Dylan's inbox, anonymous spite that reignited doubts. Am I just the rebound? He asked one stormy night, thunder rumbling like unresolved bass. I knelt before him, as in that bath long ago, hands cupping his face. You're the foundation, Dylan. The rest, shingles that blow off. The climax revisited wasn't destruction, but renewal. We eloped to City Hall on a whim. No fanfare, just vows exchanged over courthouse coffee. Rings, simple silver bands engraved with coordinates of that first bathroom door. Sarah came, tear-streaked but smiling, toasting with decaf. To messy families, she said, and we echoed, the circle mending. Now, 2 years past that pivot. We live in a bungalow in Finney Ridge, garden overrun with herbs and his easel by the window catching north light. I still build, he designs, our mornings tangled in sheets that smell of home. The bath, a relic in the old house we sold, but its echo lingers, in the way I draw his bath after long days, kneeling not to help but to worship, our eyes locking in that same unspoken vow. Love, in its American grit, isn't fairy tale. It's the storm you weather, the betrayal you outlast, emerging scarred but standing. And in Dylan's gaze, every dawn, I see forever not perfect, but profoundly ours.